Good morning, Luis. Thank you very much for taking your time to be on with us on Value Creation in Life Sciences, episode 38. I hope to again bring you back on episode 60th. Thank you.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. Yeah.
So, Luis, why don't we start with a small introduction? What made you to be a venture capital and your career progression?
Wow, you're asking for a small introduction, and that in fact it's very long. I'm gonna make it really short. Um, I used to be a neurosurgeon before jumping into the dark side of venture capital, and I made the decision based on several circumstances. But I used to be very entrepreneurial when I was young. In fact, I founded some companies in the past, some of them with venture capital, and then I was intrigued by this model of creation of value precisely. And I thought, I don't know, but while exploring these avenues, I saw I could add real value to the industry, and that's the reason why I decided to allocate my full time to venture capital. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So let's start with your recent success in Versantis. And the question is not related to Versantis, but rather, what's that thing in biotech investing that is hard, very scarce, but that makes you very good at investing?
Well, to invest properly, one needs to take into account lots of things, right? But there are a few things that are more important than others. Okay, of course, the team is absolutely essential. You need to read very well the team and whether they will be able to push forward until the end, right? That's one. Second thing that's very important is science. I mean, you need to have what I call the wow slide. If there's a wow slide that shows good quality science and shows the delta that you can have on the patient, that usually is something really important. And then finally, the clinical need. I mean, what are we trying to solve here? Is this a small thing? It is a very big thing when people are really struggling, and then we can help them out. Because if you have the patient in mind, is always the best advice that I give to young analysts is when you start going to boards, I mean, always when you make a decision, always think about what the patient would think about that decision, because ultimately success is related to really being very, very focused on patients, okay, and on their well-being. That correlates with success. But there's a final thing that I don't see people analyze much, and in my humble opinion, is very important, which is, I mean, it's very difficult to explain, but I will try to explain it using an analogy. I mean, when you invest in a company, let's imagine like a tree, okay? The company is the tree, and then you are analyzing the company, and you're looking at the branches, the quality of the leaves, the strength of the whatever. I mean, but then people believe that we venture capitals invest in the tree, and this is not true. I mean, we are not investing in the tree. We are rather investing in the location of the tree in the forest. Meaning, I mean, if the tree is in the sunny side of the forest, then it will grow tremendously. If the tree it's in a side of the forest that there's no sun and there's rocks and there's no water, then it will suffer tremendously. And this being on the sunny side means being on a trendy, new leading edge space that is attracting the attention of other venture capitals around the world. Because take into account that when investing in a company, the first hurdle that you're going to face is precisely financing the company, especially if you are an early stage investor such as we are, okay? So the first thing, even getting into clinical studies or succeeding, is will this company be financed in the future? And for that, you need to have a very good story, and you need to invest in companies that are trendy enough and are in the space that will be in the future of medicine, meaning will be or is in the sunny side of the mountain. Yes.
Got it. Thank you very much. Now, that brings to me a very interesting question, which some of the CEOs have kind of commented to me. And that is when you talk about the sunny side, and when you also talk about being trendy and attractive. Now, some of the CEOs that work in urology or wound healing, they have mentioned to me that these things are not kind of sexy for investors, and like oncology. And for example, so would you see that as a hurdle? Because, for example, if you see wound healing, there is an unmet patient need. But if that company is not funded, then patient's problem will not be solved. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of answer
Uh,
this?
that's,
Like,
that's indeed a very good question, but it's not, I mean, take into account as well that this is cyclical. Okay, now you mentioned very well the most hot space is oncology. Yes, but then we see, for example, you mentioned neurology, and then we see the field of neurology really, really pushing and getting more important every day, right? So, and it will come, I mean, maybe one moment will come when neurology will be the most trendy space to invest in, and then another discipline is going to be going up, right? So we never know, but for example, using the case of neurology, it's, of course, it's about the clinical need, of course, but then it's about as well how easy to prove will be that project that you have in mind. Because in neurology, for example, it is not the same, I don't know, epilepsy. You have very solid endpoints that you can analyze at a phase 1 or 2. You have like a natural history of the disease that you can track very well because everything happens very fast. And on the other extreme, for example, you have, I don't know, Alzheimer, or even worse, schizophrenia, where the endpoints are not so clear. The natural history is very slow. It's going to be very difficult to prove at a clinical stage. So it is as well about how easy it is to demonstrate. And the more easy it is, the more appetite we have as venture capitalists, because of course we have a duty to the patient. I am an MD by training, so I really care about patients, believe me. But to get until the end, there's many things that you need to take into account. But of course, indications that are very difficult, usually as there's a market failure, then there are non-dilutive capital that usually can be injected in those to get the situation a bit more even, you know. So there's like an invisible hand, like Adam Smith in the 20th sorry, in the 18th
mm,
century, that talked about the invisible hand. There's an invisible hand that makes everything fair at the end of the day. And but yes, we all work to solve patients' problems, so that should be our main focus.
got it. Thank you. That also brings me to an interesting question about, would you also agree that the valuations are very high for those therapeutic areas that have more difficulty? Like, for example, if you are working in Alzheimer right now, we recently had a failure in Alzheimer, as you know, or in oncology, for example, where even all the companies that are targeting, they are able to, by median, you already know this data, that by median they're able to increase the patient's life by 2.5 months actually. So the harder the indications and so on, the more optionality in terms of valuation, and that also is also attracting a lot of investments. At the end of the day, I'm not saying that it's only about valuation, it's also about the patient's lives, but do you agree
Yeah.
that both go hand in hand?
Yes, but there are like some contradictions there that I'm really aware of. And I mean, at the end of the day, the market speaks, and the market is the one that pays. You are right in a sense that the hardest indication have the better positioning for market access sometimes, etc. But let me put you an example that contradicts that. Okay, just to take into, I mean, to have in mind that it is a bit more complex than that. For example, a gene therapy for a rare indication. We are witnessing the most expensive treatments right now, because all this research takes a long time, a lot of effort, a lot of risk taking, and it needs to be rewarded, right? But for example, I don't know, we could without naming names, but for example, for a rare disease, you could have a treatment that the cost is 2.1 millions per patient. Okay, but then you think, okay, but then for a normal, not for a rare disease, but for a common disease such as diabetes, a gene therapy would have a really inferior price, but that's not the case. If you look at the deals and you look at what the system is paying, the price maybe it's not 2.1, but maybe it's, I'm just inventing here, it's 1.5. So rare diseases are super interesting, but sometimes not so rare diseases are interesting as well. But it all comes down to your initial point, which is it's not only about valuation, but about the clinical need that we're solving. If the problem
Exactly.
is very important, it will have a premium in the market, for sure. I mean, now, for example, what are the most excruciating problems that we're facing? Glioblastoma in oncology, pancreatic cancer in
Mm.
oncology. In CNS, for example, I don't know, all these amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, multiple sclerosis, plus Alzheimer or Parkinson, for example. These are non-solved problems that for sure would get a premium in the market if someone gets the answer right. So yeah.
Thank you. So in the first question, which I started, I talked about what's hard, from the company side. You talked about company side. Now I'm going to talk about what are the skills that a VC like you have that, or let's say if I ask you directly, what are the skills you have or your team has in VC that is not easy replicable?
That's a very good question. And it is difficult to summarize, but you know what we do for a living. I mean, my job is to predict the future. I mean, I'm being a bit um, blunt here, but what I do for a living is I try to predict the future. And in order to predict the future with a certain degree of certainty, right? There are a few things that you need to excel at, right? And of course, to predict the future, you need to read. I mean, the
Exactly.
first advice that I would give someone willing to enter into the VC space, I mean, read, read, read. I mean, every day, at all times, the last Nature, the last Science, the last Nature Biotech, the last Nature Medicine, everything. That's the first thing. Secondly, it's talk to, for example, other fellow VCs, because every time I meet another managing partner from another fund, I learn about their positioning. I adjust it's like a Bayes statistics here, right? I mean, my
Exactly.
next move is conditioned by the previous result, right? And every time I talk to a VC investor and I discuss about a potential investment, I learn things. Every time I talk to a key opinion leader, it is amazing what you learn. I mean, my job is a privilege because I am surrounded by the most brilliant people in the world. I mean, some of them will end up being Nobel Prizes. I'm not exaggerating here. So they are incredibly smart, and every opinion they have, it's super interesting. And then you need to have as well, besides reading, besides talking to other people, in order to interpret well the future, I know it's going to sound a bit weird, but I love math, and I have a very statistically driven mind, you know. So I do like data science, in what's going on with the IPOs, what's going on with the recent investments, how are the trends going in terms of valuation, in terms of exits, in terms of licenses. So, and everything gets into the same place. And if you have a clear picture of what you're looking at, you get hints on where the market is going. And you need to be, I'm just answering your question, you need to be very good at detecting those trends. And they are subtle. They are not like in the face. You need to look for them very carefully, right? And yeah, to be good at what we do, first of all, you need to be able to predict the future. And of course, you need to read minds, because everything goes down to execution. We don't invest in ideas. The value of an idea is zero. Nothing, rien, niente. I don't care the language, nothing, okay? if you take that idea to the marketplace, it may be worth billions, literally, but it's not about the idea, it's about the execution, about the team um, executing. So that's where we try to read the people. And of course, you make mistakes. I mean, I made mistakes in the past, reading people that finally they didn't deliver, right? But you need to become every day a bit better in reading people. And of course, this is an industry that is extremely science driven. I mean, I cannot highlight this more, and you need to be aware of everything, because if you want to add value to the companies, first of all, you start by doing like a gap analysis of what's missing, what does the company need to do to in order to get our own money, for example. But then we try to focus on the critical path that the company needs to follow until the end. And our recent exits, for example, Versantis or Sanifit, just a few months before, I mean, it is because every company, believe me, this is a roller coaster. Venture capital is not for the faint of heart, okay? And it is a roller coaster. Companies goes up, company goes down, and then, but you need to adjust your pitch at every moment. And above everything, you need to be really resilient and keep on pushing and keep on pushing and never stop pushing. Because at the end of the day, if you succeed, patients will get better lives, and our investors and ourselves will get a fair return as well on the investment. So that's the nature of the game.
Thank you very much, Luis. That was an excellent answer. And to talk about reading, I remember, I'm sure as an investor, you are aware of Charlie Munger, who also talks about how to be good at investing, you need to have multidisciplinary skills. And that also requires reading about all the subjects. When you read about different subjects, then you're able to connect the dots. And if not, then you're kind of frog in the well, and you know only about that particular stuff actually.
That's
So
and just a small comment in
yeah,
relation to the multidisciplinarity. I couldn't do anything by myself. I mean, it's all about the team that I have as
exactly.
well, right? I mean, there are people specialists in some things, others are specialists in other things, but in this industry, and now I'm speaking for myself, right? But you need to be surrounded by the best team available. I mean, people that you can
Absolutely.
trust. This is crucial for success, so yeah.
Cannot agree more. So, I think, I have found very few people, let's say, in my interactions, where our thoughts merge, especially in thinking probabilistically. Because when you think about future, you don't have to think in discrete terms, 0 or 1. There are many things that could happen, but although we do not know what exactly will happen, but at least having that particular thought in mind is the first step.
It's not about being right at every time. If you think statistically, all you need is a statistical edge. I mean, if
Exactly.
I get my answers, I mean, a coin toss will be 50%, right? So, for example, if I get 55% of chances of being right, this extra 5 points, if I invest many times,
Yeah,
I will succeed.
exactly.
So it's about
Exactly.
the statistical edge.
Exactly. Perfect. So that leads to me and to another interesting question, that how can we spot, let's say, situations when thinking probabilistically, uh, that is going to make our decision worse rather than better? So generally we think probabilistically to make our decisions better, but can you spot situations where you think that thinking probabilistically will rather make my decision worse rather than better?
Of course I can, and that is a beautiful question indeed. Again, um, I mean, in almost every discipline, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Okay, not in life sciences, I'm afraid. So, you need to think probabilistic, but not in every way that you can imagine, but only in where the field is going and this trend starts. Because by definition, if you do leading edge investments such as we are doing right now, you need to think first. I mean, leading edge, when you're doing an investment that's leading edge, you have no one to consult, because by definition, leading edge, there's very few people in the world that know about that. So you need to pick very carefully who to consult with. And there's statistical thinking is like a frame of mind, but it's not the answer to everything. You are very right. But for example, I have one of the things that I love the most when challenging an investment, because of course an investment, I mean, you first like the investment, you try to find reasons to say no. If you don't find reasons to say no, then you go on and study a bit more. But for example, if I'm convinced the company is going to become a success, and then I pitch my idea to the team, okay, and I say, look, I've seen this, what do you think, as a preliminary gut feeling of what will happen with this company. If everyone in the team agrees with me and thinks that the opportunity is a great opportunity, I'm too late. This is too late. This is no longer leading edge, because to invest in leading edge, you need to be I mean, you're not gonna find comfort in investing in leading edge. You will be uncomfortable. If you don't feel the being uncomfortable, you're not making a good investment. Okay, so it takes statistics in order to detect the areas of maximum interest, but at the same time, you need to have a very clear picture of what's valuable in medicine, what will help the patient, and what are the fields that are trendy that may come up with solutions for that problem. And for example, in oncology, you may have very different alternatives. You may love cell therapy through CAR-Ts or through TILs, or you may love checkpoint inhibitors, or you may love whatever the field, okay? Antibody drug conjugates, whatever the field. But you need to have like a preference for it. I mean, in your mind, even if you diversify a little bit and you invest a little bit here, a little bit there, but in your mind, you need to have a clear champion. If you think, I don't know, I'm not just stating my champions, because this is confidential, right? But if you think that cell therapy is the future, then you will invest a bit more in cell therapy. And that's the statistical edge that I was talking about before.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I know you are investing at seed stage, but I think in every biotech companies, and I'm not sure about your future strategy as well, but we also talk about scaling a biotech company. How can a biotech company scale? So do you have any thoughts on what have you learned in scaling a biotech company, or how the companies can scale that most of the CEO misses the point?
Yes, this has to do, I mean, the CEO at first, especially the ones coming from a science background or the first-time CEOs, they don't get the importance of the governance of the company at the board level, okay? And to mature a company, it's not just about the company, it's about the board of the company, okay? So if the company moves forward and you're getting more and more investors interested in, then the board will grow. Of course, there's a size of the board that's the right size. You cannot grow indefinitely, but professionalizing the board is like the starting point to professionalize the company, because the CEO, in talking to the board, they immediately realize how important is the board when making decisions. It is all about politics inside the board, and you need to address every investor in the right way, and every investor will try to help you. I mean, we're not there just to listen. We're there to roll up our sleeves and to help the company,
Exactly.
right? And professionalizing a company involves getting a better board, involves as well getting the best people for C-level positions at the company, for example. And then in general, involves just focusing on the CEO into having the best people, not only in C-level positions, but throughout the company, right? To being surrounded by the best of the best. And the more quality has the people, the more mature is the company. And then there are a few other things, such as, I don't know, reporting and getting used to very professionalized and structured thinking, that helps as well. But let me point out that sometimes the founder of a company, the creator of a company, is the right CEO for the first months/years of the company, but it may come a time when it is not in the best interest of the company or its founder for the CEO to remain in that position. Maybe we need a more experienced CEO that has sold companies before, that can engage. And this usually happens. The transition from preclinical to clinical is crucial for a company. The skills that you need inside the company are completely different. Okay, in preclinical, you need one set of skills. Once you're a clinical company, you need another set of skills because you engage immediately in doing business development, talking to pharma companies.
Exactly.
So the final point about professionalizing the company or making the company grow is finding the right chief business officer or the right people with the right network. Sometimes they are independent at the board. You may have lots of ways of doing that, but you need people used to talking to the industry and to doing an outstanding business development,
Exactly.
as well.
So you made a very good point about having the right management at the right time. Would you agree that in the initial stages, you actually need more of a CSO than a CEO, for example, and maybe then move forward and then at the right time get the CEO rather than making the CSO CEO and then later finding out that, oh, looks like we made a mistake and then we change.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. That's a very market standard transition, because usually the founder starts as a CEO, and when the time comes, maybe he or she steps not down but laterally to become the CSO of the company, and then we bring a CEO. But ultimately, when the company is on the verge of being a clinical company, we need as well a CMO, which is an extraordinarily important figure at any company. The chief medical officer, the one making the decisions about the patients and the clinical trials, etc. So it is a very normal transition. I mean, starting as CEO, then becoming CSO, but then at the same time when you bring the CEO, you bring as well the CMO, and then you get like every day a better company just because of that. Let me tell you, in my humble experience, the quality of the CEO is, especially when the company is at a clinical stage, it's an incredible success factor for the company. I think it's the most important success factor. Yeah.
Completely agree. Thank you very much, Luis. You talked somewhere on those lines about structured thinking, right? And that brings to me to a very interesting point, and let me know your thoughts on that. I mean to say, to give you a certain analogy, we are a service firm, but we try to, I mean to say, the culture that we have developed is that we start our day at Mantra, at Mantra reading for 1.5 hours every day. And I like my mornings to be as free as possible because I need time to think on my clients' problems and so on. However, and if I replicate the same model with the CEO of biotech companies and so on, what I see, not all of the time, but with most of them, the problem is they are into meetings from 9 to 5, kind of. And that gives me a kind of, I've also shared this feedback with, few of my clients where I argue that having a time to sit down and think only for yourself is going to have, I think, more positive impact on the company because you can come out with, several thoughts. What do you think about that? Or because in the big companies you have meetings, and some of the CEOs who come from these big giants also try to have that kind of culture where they feel that having meetings. I'm not saying meeting is not important, but
no, of course. I mean, you need balance at the end of the day, right? But I absolutely agree with you that thinking is a very critical part of our of our job, right? And I am really obsessed here, and the word I'm using the right word. I am obsessed with efficiency in meetings. We have several rules here with the people I work with. I mean, only the people that need to attend that meeting should attend that meeting. If we can make it 15 minutes, is better than half an hour. And before going into a meeting, I try to have a clear picture in mind of what I want to solve with that meeting. And then once I get the thing solved, the meeting is over, you know. So rational use of time is essential, because otherwise you're very right, you don't have time to think. And at the end of the day, thinking, now I'm going to differentiate between a CEO and a venture capitalist. Okay, for a CEO, maybe it's really intensive in the sense that you have meetings and meetings and meetings, and I understand that, but again, all my rules apply the same. But for a venture capital, there's a part of what we do that is essentially thinking about what will happen in the future, and I need time to think. Of course I do.
Exactly.
And I look for that time actively, otherwise I would be dead. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you very much for this. So, we talked about scaling a biotech company. Now, if I ask you that, if an individual asks you that, what are the ways that we as an individual inside the company, or a CEO or a CSO, how can people can scale?
You mean the professional
Yeah,
progression of every employee,
exactly.
every
Yeah.
people? I don't like the word employee, by the way. I used it, but I regret. I don't want to talk about employees. I want to talk about people involved in a very important quest, right? Yeah, that's a very difficult question, because it depends highly on how, I mean, on the psychology of every people that is working with you, you know. And maybe I shouldn't say that in that way, but this is, I mean, at the same time that you are trying to read I mean, the CEOs of the companies you are investing in minds, you need, as a CEO, or myself, for example, with the team, you need to read as well what every member of the team needs in order to really progress. And the answer is not the same for everyone. You know, some people need one thing, some people need another thing. But if you provide the right tools, and especially if you keep, like, you know, I like the expression of being optimist paranoids. These are the people that I want with me. You know, I want optimist paranoids, people that question everything, that are worried about almost everything that could happen, but at the same time they keep their vision. So if you are like this with the team as well, if you keep like an optimism on the future, and ask everyone to keep pushing, usually this in itself is a major how could I say that, a major incentive for them to progress as well, and to keep the pace of the boat that is sailing, you know. So, but everyone needs different things. I mean, the real answer to your question is, it's too complex to be answered in just but all I can say is you need to read what drives the person that is working with you, in order to help that person to progress. Yeah.
And also, do you think that, let's say, for example, any managers or the CEOs, in order to scale up, also learn the art of delegating to those who can amplify your
Yeah.
capabilities? Because when you start working on, you think that, okay, I'm best at doing this particular job A, and then we feel skeptical that if I bring a new guy, maybe he may not perform as well as I'm doing. But the problem is that, the first step to take to delegate, actually, because not delegating, I think I have also seen in my experience, is one of the reasons that brings inefficiency, because you cannot do everything in one day.
That is so true. And in fact, it is a personal problem as well. I think we all have this problem. I mean, when to delegate, when you have enough trust in someone just to delegate things, or where to micromanage. And I'm not, I mean, I'm going to be very humble. I used to micromanage a lot. You know, all my life I've been micromanaging people, and that was not good. Okay, I'm getting better, but I mean, it always shows at the end of the day. But you need to avoid micromanaging. You need to have people that you, I mean, and if you want people that are very good at their jobs, you need to let them fail a bit. Let me put you an example coming from my previous life when I was a neurosurgeon. There's one type of surgical operation that we perform in neurosurgery, which is aneurysm surgery, which is like, I mean, the artery, the wall of the artery is so thin that there's like a balloon of getting off the artery, and this balloon may break, and if the balloon breaks, then it's a disaster. So in order to solve this, you place like a clip in the neck of the balloon to isolate it from the circulation, and that's it, and the patient is cured, right? But when you place the clip, this is very, very risky. If the aneurysm breaks, it's many times people die even on the operating table, right? So when the big boss places the clip, the chief of the surgical unit places the clip, it's only 1 or 2 out of 10 that break, right? If the resident that's learning places the clip, usually it's a lot of times that the aneurysm breaks. And then should we let operate the residents? Of course we should, because otherwise in 10 years time from now, no one will know how to operate an aneurysm. And here is the same. I mean, if you're negotiating with someone or whatever, then sometimes the most advanced people that you have on the team, they should lead that negotiation and let them. But of course, you need to ponder very carefully which is extremely important, which is important, and which is medium, and which is easy, and then allow them according to their capabilities as well, you know. But at the end of the day, you need to let go, and you need to let them grow. And I don't know, very humbly, but I'm very happy with how all of the team is growing, and that's the goal, right? So
Perfect. Thank you. Now let's move quickly to due diligence. And I would like to bring one important point here. You know, we all human beings try to mimic others. And if you might have read René Girard's Mimetic Desire, you know, that talks about how, for example, two children would like to have the same toy. As a human being, we like to follow what other people are doing. For example, in investing also is very similar, where you also try to see what others are doing, for example. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that during the due diligence of the company, has it ever happened that your due diligence for that particular company differed from a due diligence by a very well-known VC firm, for example, much
of
larger,
course,
you know, than you?
of course it happens. Yeah.
And and then if that happened, then what was your thought process? So there is one side where which is a defensive risk, that okay, this
No,
big
no, no.
VC is jumping in.
It's gonna seem like very, very bold and even presumptuous. I'm very sorry, but that's true. I just don't care about other due diligence. I care about ours. Okay, and the investment is made if our due diligence says that we need to invest, and I don't care what other people do. And in fact, it happened many times that we've explored with fellow colleagues, other venture capital funds, that at the middle of the process or at the very last minute, sometimes even, they say, no, we're not going to invest. And that never alters our own decision. It may alter it if we don't have enough money, but that's another problem. I'm talking about the need, I mean, the desire to invest. Of course, sometimes we disagree, and everyone is entitled to think whatever, because we're all risking our own. I mean, I always like to say that we are 1 or 2 decisions away from total catastrophe in venture capital. You know?
Correct.
I mean, you need to be very focused on what you do, and everything plays a role in the success of your firm, right? But very humbly, and I don't want to look presumptuous, but I simply don't care about other due diligence. I care about ours, and no investment will be made based on another's due diligence. And on the contrary, if everyone says no, but I mean, the worst thing that I can do is to invest in, I mean, where everybody else is investing. That's the recipe for failure, you know. So if we have clear ideas of where medicine is going, where the field is going, then we need to be bold and execute the investments. And of course, we cannot live with just one or two investments. We need to diversify. But if your reasoning was sound, then you will succeed, because probabilistically some companies will fail and some others will succeed. And here in our industry, you only need a couple of very good deals in a fund to really have a very solid multiple of the investment. So yeah, you need to be right a few times, okay?
Exactly.
But for that, you need to, I mean, I don't recommend you to follow what others are doing. Yeah, I mean,
Thank you. I would have loved to kind of get into that process of the decision making, but maybe that's for some other time, because now we have just two questions and we have to wrap it up. So, true or false? A good biotech CEO will make a good VC.
Sorry, in what?
True or false? A good biotech CEO will make a good venture capital. What do you think? True or false?
False.
Okay. Would you like to elaborate a little bit?
Well, the skills that you need to be a CEO are different than the skills you need to be a managing partner of a venture capital firm. This, I mean, I answered false, but this doesn't mean that we can see very good examples of good CEOs that became very good managing partners of venture capital. I'm not saying, of course, it is absolutely doable, but if you want me to be, I mean, true or false, false. I mean, it doesn't make your success like as a given. No, you need to deploy other skills, different skills.
Got it. And my last question is something related to a very new topic, which is ESG. Okay. So, you know, I'm sure as a fund, you also have to be aligned with ESG by next year. And so, what are the metrics you think is out of ESG is valuable for biotech, and how do you see those metrics align with the long-term returns that you could make or the funds could make?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I will try to be as straightforward as possible. I have mixed feelings with the ESG movement. On the one side, I think it is absolutely necessary, but a fund should aim at being the best fund at finding the right solutions for patients, not aiming at being the best fund in ESG. I mean, this is something that is useful, but it is not the goal of the fund. Okay.
Exactly.
Having said that, the more ESG compliant you are, the better. That's for sure. And it is our responsibility in leading, not here in venture capital, everywhere at every type of company, of leaving a better world to our kids than the one that we received. And I'm afraid I'm failing quite by a lot in this. But in life sciences, it's a very special case, because it's not like investing in real estate. You know, if we're talking investing in life sciences, of course, we are all aiming to have a very solid return on investment. But at the same time, if you do your job well, you're getting as well a social return on investment, because everything we do for patients is going to change potentially millions of lives. These deals that we recently closed about Sanifit or Versantis, which, I mean, the Sanifit was the largest deal ever in Spain. We are really proud. And Versantis is, again, a company that, I mean, the deal has been a very solid deal as well. But both deals are not only solid on return on investment, they are incredibly solid on social return on investment. So in a way, life sciences venture capital, even without doing nothing, we are doing a lot for ESG outcomes, right? ESG, sorry. So yeah, I mean, we can always do more, and we are committed. We had a meeting very recently here with the team just to find more things to do in that sense. And you are very right. Next year we need to adjust as well to these policies. But we're doing it not because we are forced to, but because we really do believe that we need to be compliant with that. But at the same time, let me tell you again, I mean, we will make more difference in the world if we concentrate above anything else on solving patients' needs, you know, and that by itself is our goal, what we do for a living.
Exactly. Luis, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your time taken. And I must say that, I really enjoyed this wonderful conversation.